Hey, this is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. Well, for the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about exercise and how to build muscle and maintain strength. My goals are relatively simple. I know from every study, everybody that talks about aging and living well and being healthy, they all kind of agree on one thing. If you want to live your best life and you want to be as healthy as possible, you need to be relatively strong and you've got to maintain muscle mass. If you don't do those things, you're in trouble. You're going to become frail, and we want to avoid frailty. So how do you do that? Because what happens is your mitochondria start to break down after age 30. Your body starts to fall apart slowly. You will lose somewhere about 10% of your muscle mass every decade until about 60, and then it starts to escalate really fast. It gets even worse. So unless you do something else, and what is that something else? You've got to do some form of resistance training. And resistance training comes in one of three forms. You can do body weight resistance training, you can do regular weights, or you can use some variable resistance like bands. So let's kind of talk about the pros and cons of all these different techniques and how to incorporate them, and why you might want to do them, because frankly none of them are bad. They're all great. They just have different pros and cons. So when we're talking about body weight exercise is actually rather excellent. Cool thing about it is it's cheap. It doesn't require any money out of pocket. You've got your body and you're going to do it. And what's really cool about them is you can test yourself, you can watch how much you're pushing, and you can do your counts, and you can pay attention to that type of stuff. And there's lots of variations. You can, if you're doing push-ups, you can, once you've progressed from going from knees to where you're doing a straight line push-up, and then you can start putting your feet up, etc., and you can keep changing the angles. There's a lot of different stuff that you can do to make yourself stronger utilizing body weight squats. You can, maybe start picking up some objects around the house and doing your body weight squats. You can do isometrics, which are where you go down and you squat and you hold it. And I do that every morning for a minute, and it's painful. I do not like doing them, but they work. They really do help build muscle. So all these things, they're all good. The problem is there seems to be kind of a natural limitation to them with how much body weight you actually have. And I know there's gurus out there that will disagree with me on it and think that you can always change any given exercise and create a variation of it to make things harder. But one of the things that you need to do in order to build muscle in the long haul is what we call progressive overload. You've got to keep pushing the muscle. So one of the cool other ways of lifting weights or getting resistance training is by utilizing weights. And the nice thing about weights are it's really easy to gauge progressive overload. You know that when you start off, I started off with 10 pounds going like this, and I got up to a set of 20, and now I'm going to go to 15 and do that. And and you can keep adding the weights to it, and you can test and you can see that you're getting stronger. And that's what you want. You want the progressive overload. You always want to be challenging your body to get stronger. So, weights are fantastic. There's one limitation to them, though, and that is it's your weight versus gravity. So basically, these only really work in one plane of motion when you think about it. You're pushing up and it's coming down. And, if you can only afford a set of dumbbells, which are great. I've got several different sets of different weights that I use for different things. They're wonderful, but you need to get more equipment, which usually means that you need to join a gym. And that's, time consuming. The closest gym to me is 10 minutes away, plus I got to, get dressed, change clothes, etc. We're talking about maybe 20 minutes or so to get over to the gym, then do the exercise, and then, come back and do the same thing again. So, in order to overcome the problem of weights, which is that plane in motion, you need to utilize lots of equipment. That way, you got pull down machines, which utilize cables to move the weight up when you pull down, etc., and changing the angles, etc. Those require, in order to do good chest presses, you need benches, etc., and then you need barbells. It requires a lot of equipment, and frankly, if you get good at it, you're going to need some training, because form is absolutely vital. Because look, when it comes to weight training, or resistance training, I've got 3 basic goals. Number 1, I want to build muscle. Okay, because muscle is what stores glucose, gets bad stuff out of the body, and provides you that reservoir you need in order to survive. So I want muscle. I want strength, because strength prevents frailty. And I want particularly explosive strength. That would be really good, because that's what's going to help keep me from falling. But there's a third thing. I don't want to hurt myself, because I've seen too many really good friends of mine that lifted wrong or doing things in a wrong way for a long period of time. They created tendon damage, they needed surgery, etc. And I don't want that. And look, when you start lifting heavier and heavier things, your risk of injury go up pretty dramatically. I'm not going to say that it's bad, and I'm not saying it's not worth the risk, but your risk of injury when you're lifting weights go up. There's one other problem with lifting weights. Okay, so you get it loaded up like this. You are pretty much, if you want to create constant muscle tension, you've got to do this in a very slow and controlled way. You cannot do explosive moves, because when you do that, you've got initial force that's going up, but then, when you go through very quickly, you're actually just utilizing momentum. The movement. And not that, having that type of explosive strength is a bad thing, but it's not building a lot of muscle. So is there something else that you can utilize that could get around a lot of these problems? And this is why I kind of settled on bands. Bands have a lot of advantages. I'm not somebody who says that you have to utilize bands in order to get healthy or get stronger. I'm just saying they are a great tool that is overlooked by too many people and are kind of dismissed. Nice thing about bands is they are variable resistant. In other words, if you pull the band from here, that's much harder than pulling it from here. You can change your anchor points, where you put your feet and how you do it. And if you put your feet way out here, it's going to be harder to pull this thing up. So you can vary the resistance pretty easily. Now, the downside of bands with the variable resistance is it's not very objective. I can't tell you how much I bench press based on a band. All I can tell you is I know I've gotten stronger, because this used to be kind of my starting band when it was to do overhead presses, and all of a sudden, I had to get to a thicker band. And the cool thing about it is bands come in various sizes and thicknesses and variable and different resistances, which gives you a lot of flexibility, and they're really cheap. Which means you can also utilize these at home. One of the cool things about this is bands are not limited in terms of your plane of what you're working out in. I can get resistance going out straight. I can do it going up and down. I can do it pushing down. There's a lot of, there's no problem with, what plane I'm working in. I'm not working against gravity, I'm working against the band. So there's a lot of cool stuff that I can do with the bands. Virtually anything that you want to do in the gym, you can do with a band. And one thing that people don't realize is most of the time when you buy these bands, they've come up with they've got some little goofy doodad like this that a lot of people go, what's that? Well, what that is this goes over the door jamb, or goes in the door, and that creates a whole new plane for you to be able to work in. So you put this in the doorway, now you can do pull downs and pulling exercises, and you can move it down to the side and you can pull out this way. So there's a lot of different stuff that you can do with the bands, and just hooking this up to a door, now you can pull in all sorts of different planes of motion that are going to create tension on your muscles. Now, I am one of these people that when I do workouts, I am not going to become Mr. Olympia. I know that. That's not my goal, actually. My goal is not to become the jacked 20-year-old kid that's on the cover of some magazine. I don't want to work that hard. Frankly, I don't think I have the genetics for it. I lost over 100 pounds in my 50s, which means I've got a lot of excess skin that will never go away unless I pay a lot of money and go through a lot of pain to have surgery on. And frankly, I don't want to do it. So I'm not going to have six packs because I've got excess skin. I had a DEXA scan. And I look the same way as I do then, but I had 17% body fat, which is pretty darn good for a guy that's in his 60s. But I don't have visible abs because I've got all this excess skin. Excess skin is not the same thing as body fat. Okay, they're two very different things. So I've got this excess skin. It's there. I know it, and as a result, the muscles ain't going to shine through like I would if I got rid of that extra skin and I worked out real hard. And frankly, I don't want to work out that hard. If you want to get great results, you're going to spend hours in the gym. And I don't want to spend hours in the gym. I want to get my workout done in 10 to 15 minutes. Because there's enough studies out there that show that, look, just doing 15 minutes a few times a week is more than enough to create hypertrophy in the muscle, which is going to allow muscle growth, and you're going to get stronger, etc. And so, you can utilize bands that will create hypertrophy. It's going to help improve your strength, and one of the cool things about bands is I can also do ballistic moves. I can take this and go wham, right up there. And guess what? There's tension on it the whole time because I'm not creating the momentum that I would with a weight, but because it's using the tension of the band, it's going to keep that on there the whole time. Now, the other cool thing about it is you can do this slowly and create tension on your body, and you can do it quickly. So, it's a variable resistance, and, challenge your muscles. Keep trying it in different ways. Do it fast, do it slow. All of these things have different effects on the muscles, and it's great because you can do it with the bands, and it's cheap, and you don't have to go to a gym. You can do this at home. You can take them with you in your suitcase. And I do a carry-on everywhere I go, and I've taken my whole gym with me just by putting in a bunch of bands, and you can utilize it all the time. So this is kind of an opening shot at how to utilize, how to build up muscle and strength without hurting yourself. And I'm going to show you this week a couple of exercise routines that I do to help build muscle and strength and not hurt myself, and keep it down to 10 to 15 minutes a couple of times a week. So that's what's coming up. If you like this message, please hit like and subscribe. Tell other people about this channel. Give them some ideas. I mean, frankly, I don't think there's any one-size-fits-all thing. Any type of resistance training is better than none. Frankly, when you just do kind of this minimum approach that I've got, where I think you get about 80% of the results of somebody who spends 2 hours in the gym, but I'm only doing 20% of the work. And if I can get 80% of the results with only 20% of the work, that's a bargain to me, and I'm going to do it because that, frankly, that extra 20% that they're getting requires 80% more work, and I don't want to do it. I want to get done, and I want to get stronger. I want to get more muscle just to keep me from frailty, and I don't want to hurt myself. And that's my goal. And if that's kind of your goal, if you just want to get stronger, healthier, and not hurt yourself, then come back in the next couple of days as we go through different workouts. This is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. I will talk to you again soon.